All right, well then, welcome everybody back to another Sad Jams interview. We are bringing you inside the minds of some of the best up and coming and rising artists in DIY and emo music and all that fun stuff. I'm Anthony Corbo. I'm sitting here with Sam and Sky from Cheem. How is it going, y'all?
Great, thank you.
Good.
Going well.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. So, yeah, your band's super interesting. There's so many different places that I could start with this interview, but I think the best place to go is like your sound is super unique. You've got hyper pop, you've got hip hop, you got bubblegum, you got hardcore, you got pop punk, you got all these different things that kind of you can see traces of them, but they all really come together in just a super unique sound. I'm wondering like where these influences come from, what encourages the band to try new things, maybe how do your different influences differ from each other? Yeah, curious how this all comes to be, Cheem.
Well, I think we directly take a lot of inspiration from bands that we heard growing up who were like kind of apt to blend genres. Like Linkin Park specifically is a big one where the first time I heard that in like elementary school, I was like, oh, damn, like you can put together hip hop and electronica and like hard rock and make it like cohesive and good. And like even a band like Fall Out Boy, like on their later work, they had a lot of influence from like pop and R&B and other genres. And it was cool to see them incorporate other stuff like that. And just like not so much stick to like the generic pop punk frame. And I think a lot of us, or all of us in the band really grew up listening to stuff that was outside of the rock sphere. Like when I was like a really young kid, my favorite artists were like the Jackson 5 and NSYNC. I didn't really like listen to too much like classic rock type stuff. My dad got me into Pearl Jam and my cousin got me to Blink-182, but it wasn't until like I met friends in school that I got more into like punk and stuff like that. So I think my music career started playing punk, but then later on as we played more and more with bands that kind of stuck to that rock blueprint, I think we were like, okay, maybe it's time to take a page like out of the book of the other, artists we listen to and try to incorporate some of that stuff. So that's kind of how that came about.
To carry on that, I remember when I was like 10 years old or maybe 12, really young, and just in my room, just like trying to act like I was Justin Timberlake dancing and sync and trying to learn all of his moves. So connect with that.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting to like hear all those things come together. And yeah, like Linkin Park was a big one that I first thought of when when we initially started talking. I started listening to your music. I was like, there's so much Linkin Park in here. And then I started reading through like a little bit of like, your bios and things. And, I definitely see like NSYNC like was written in there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's super obvious to me. And then you mentioned Fall Out Boy now and all of these artists, like, yeah, it's super apparent that that's there the whole time. I'm wondering like you two and the other members of your band, do you all come from like similar musical backgrounds and like this is kind of your way of trying something new, or is she more of like kind of an amalgamation of like everyone's different things coming together and this is just what organically results in it?
Definitely the latter for sure. I mean,
yeah.
So like I won't speak for Sam, but our other guitarist Gabe, I mean, he doesn't even really play guitar that much. He's a classically trained pianist. Like he took jazz piano in school. He majored in music production, and he like comes from a really like, grew up listening to a lot of like the Beatles and like James Taylor and stuff like that, but also a lot of like jazz stuff. So he's got like a mind for like the, the composition and all this crazy shit that I can never even think of. Our bass player Nate is like really into Primus and a lot of like weird electronic shit. And so he loves that kind of stuff. He's also kind of into prog, but our drummer Sean is like especially into prog. Like he comes from that background. His favorite band is like Intronaut, and when we first like got him into the band, like he was doing all like these like ghost notes and like crazy like syncopated patterns. It was a cool element to incorporate. And then me, it's just like, I don't know, as far as playing music goes, I just taught myself guitar and played in a bunch of like punk bands and pop punk bands and stuff like that. So like it wasn't until I actually started to get good at the instrument that I was able to incorporate the other stuff I listened to, but definitely everything I do is pretty rooted in like punk rock, I'd say.
Yeah, and for me, Cheem is actually the first band I ever joined. When I was growing up, learning, like getting myself or understanding my fascination with music, I would used to do like YouTube covers, like of acoustic songs of just shit that I liked, and like I had this friend that we would just like make songs together, and it was a lot of just like all the scene emo and like pop music from almost like a decade now, until I went to college and I met Gabe and Sky and our older members, and I was like, oh damn, like this is like a side of music that I'm like, so I've always felt like I should have been in and I want to be in. So it was like, it came really natural for me to join a band. So I almost felt like I knew how to do it already, even though I was never in one.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I feel like that is very much like key to a lot of getting that organic kind of unique sound for when you form your band and you want to stand out and differentiate. It's all these different backgrounds. So yeah, it's hearing that classical influence, hearing that the kind of traditional band setting, DIY kind of setting, and then like the YouTube setting, and just coming all together and creating this thing. It just creates something that's super unique. And your music has a ton of layering to it, and like it's got a very polished sound to it, but like you do a lot of things that like a lot of traditional polished music wouldn't necessarily have. Like you're able to take more risks than maybe like a Fall Out Boy, or even on the other end of the spectrum like an NSYNC would take. So like on that note, songwriting wise, like how do these songs come together? Where do the ideas usually come from? Is it like a collaborative songwriting process, or does someone usually come in with like a little bit more of a finished idea and then it's expanded upon over time?
Yeah, I think in this case the latter is probably true. A lot of the ideas come from like demos I make on my laptop, where I'll kind of roughly like program out drums and record bass and stuff like that. And when the songs make their way to the full band, obviously like the individual performers put their own spin on things and like adjust or suggest changes to the arrangements. But for the most part, it'll start out with like me on my laptop, usually with like either like a riff or some kind of like production idea. Before it was all just like riffs, but now that we're kind of expanding into more like electronic hip hop territory, I can incorporate some more of like my beat making stuff into it, where it's like, oh, if I want to use like a sample or like a drum beat, I can start from that and then build on there. Then the riffs come later. But yeah, and then for the actual vocals, it's mostly like either I have an idea for a part and I let Sam just like go crazy on like the other parts, or it's like I'm totally stumped. I just give the song over to Sam and Sam will come up with the vocals, and then we work together on the lyrics.
Yeah, it was kind of like overload. You were just like, I have no idea what to do with this one. And
yeah, exactly.
I had like a very rough lyric idea that is around the meaning of the song, and then Sky like was like, oh, that's great. Let's make that into the thing. And like he'll do like he'll take a lot of what I write and restructure the lyrics just to make them make more sense, or make them like a little more clever. So even if Sky is kind of like the brainchild of the project, every member of the band has their unique interpretation of what is brought to the table. And I think we're attempting to try to do something different in the future. Like at our last practice, Sky was saying how he wanted to try to write a song with the instrumentalists of the band, like as like in like a group setting, instead of just like having like an idea and growing it in like a DAW.
Yeah. Like our process has been very meticulous thus far, but I was like, I think, a lot of the riffs, because they come from me, I'm like, I'd rather come with some ideas where like I don't even touch the instrumental for it until like the production stage, like the recording stage, like just let like Gabe and Nate and Sean just like jam on stuff, and then that way Sam and I can just come in and lay down vocals. I think that'd be a fun thing. So, in the future we're gonna try out a lot of different songwriting stuff, but for so far, at least for this album, it's been the process we described before.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because you have been a band for such a long time now. I mean, I saw, at least on your releases, your first one came out in 2017, and I'm sure it took some time leading up to that and everything. So, I mean, in terms of how your music has evolved over since that time, what do you think is the biggest thing that has changed, or things that you used to do and don't do now, or do now and used to not do? Like, how has that process kind of evolved over time, I suppose?
Well, actually, we've been a band for even longer than that. I joined the band in 2015, and we dropped our first album, like this album that didn't really represent the band as what we're doing right now, but you can still find it on Bandcamp. It's called Making a Planet, and I'm just thinking of those days. And even for Downhill is definitely a better representation of the Cheem entity. But if we were like looking at Downhill, I don't know, we were younger. There was definitely like a lot of the songs that you had the ideas for, because I remember you sending me like songs like Flamingo, and I was like in my old college apartment and just like sitting in my room like trying to think of vocals for that. So I don't know, maybe of a refresh me sky and maybe like our old process.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the band started in high school, so at the time, like it was not very original. I think we started as like a Taking Back Sunday ripoff, and then like over time, we just were like, oh, you know what, maybe we should like try incorporating other rock influences, and then we got tired of the rock influences and started incorporating other genres. But like, I think the biggest thing was when our drummer and I joined. He was our old drummer before Sean. He came from like a gospel like R&B background, and so like him interpreting these like rock and like punk grooves in like through like that lens and just adding like, you know, grooves and like syncopation stuff to it. It was like, oh wow, I guess you could play that section like that, and it's actually a lot of fun. And then we started noticing the songs that were more like based around like that were more like danceable were just like a lot more fun live than just like the really fast like punk stuff that we used to do. And it also like helped us stand out from other bands who were kind of using more like traditional rock beats. So we were like, okay, we should capitalize on that and see how many different kind of like rhythms we can use. And so that was sort of the approach going to downhill. It's like, all right, let's not use any drum beats that we've really used before and see if we can start building songs from the ground up, like based on grooves and beats from completely other genres. And then eventually the production sort of stepped up to match that. Because at the time it was really like, all right, let's be a rock band who plays songs that sound like, you know, a rock cover of like a hip hop or an R&B or like a ska song or whatever. But then it was like, all right, let's actually just start producing stuff like and not even care about genre and like mix it all together. So like just over the years, our preference has kind of shifted towards like what we enjoy doing live. And as our live kind of setup has sort of grown and shifted and complicated itself to enable that, we've been able to like, you know, go into the studio and be like, all right, well, we know we're going to be able to represent this live in some way, so we're literally not limited by anything. Let's just do whatever the fuck we want.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it speaks to that organic growth that you were talking about earlier too. It's just, you know, as things evolve over time, your sound has, and now it's gotten to this point where it's really, you know, you can take it in whatever direction you want, and you know that people are going to be there for it, which I think is such a fascinating thing and really cool thing. So you've been a band, you know, for even longer than I thought at this point, you know, including the pandemic and before then and everything. What do you think has been the biggest thing that has changed in this time? Like, as we kind of get back to live music in terms of, you know, releasing music or, you know, planning shows or planning a tour or anything like that, like, what would you say has been like the biggest challenges that come out of this period, or even the biggest opportunities that you've been able to find as we kind of emerge into kind of a new landscape here?
I have some hot takes about the current situation with live music. I've been seeing a lot of people, especially like industry people, that are like, why are no one buying tickets to festivals, and why is no one paying $100 to see like so and so, like bigger bands? But meanwhile, we just played a sold out show on last Sunday, and the tickets were maybe like $20. I think people aren't looking to spend as much money to go see live shows as they used to. And with the power of the internet, there's bands like us and a lot of the bands that you find on Twitter and TikTok and other social media that people there are just now like seeing or like getting the experience of, instead of like a point back, even like when we first started, where it was like, in order for you to kind of do the thing, you had to tour and tour and tour and tour and tour. But like, we've had every single show I've played this year, I've had one person come up to me and be like, this is the first show I've ever been to. And that's, I don't know, that's just crazy to me. I think it's a really rewarding time for people, for artists like us and a lot of our mutuals that are doing the thing, and they're maybe not like a band that's selling out 500 cap rooms, but we're smelling out small clubs, and kids are really excited for it. I don't really know what the touring world is like at this moment. I'm actually a little nervous about it, just because it's been years, but we are going on some runs, so I'm curious to see how it goes. Overall it's been better than any year we've been as a band. Starting from when we played our first show, on late summer 2021 until now. Like every show has been a banger, which is wild because we've played some bad,
Unheard of.
gnarly shows, gnarly. Like even in Connecticut, which was our hometown, we had a very struggle with finding space or finding relevancy. Like the last show we played was like on a Tuesday in November. Like you would think no one was going to come, but we drew way more people than we expected, and everyone was. I personally was just impressed. So yeah, maybe that's why a lot of bands that are bigger are having problems, because I don't want to pay $80 to go see a show,
Fuck
but
that.
I'll pay $20 to go see a band that I like in a smaller club right now.
Yeah, and there's no like weird like I don't know. There's no like idolatry. I don't know what you would call it. There's no like meet and greet and VIP pass and all that shit. Like they just get off stage and you can talk to them like people, which is cool. The only shitty thing is that like the pandemic shut down a bunch of like small DIY venues, so it's kind of hard for bands to actually get a start now. So we're grateful to be in a position where like we can play like mid-sized venues because we're already established. But I imagine it's probably hard for other bands. But then that's where social media comes in, and I think people in general are like way more open to like more kinds of music than they used to be. Like not even just like average everyday people, but even people in the scene like would have thought our shit was corny as fuck like 4 years ago. So it's cool now that people are like, oh yeah, rap rock, let's do it, you know? So hey,
yeah,
it's a blessing in disguise, I guess.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this record does because yeah, I mean I think it's definitely our best work that we've done so far. And it really is. It helps us show the like everyone who is Cheem, like the lore of the band, which is something I feel like we haven't been able to present since Downhill.
Nice. Yeah. And I think I've heard a lot of other musicians that I've spoken to kind of second that mentality of, you know, it's really it's changed in a lot of ways how shows are put on and performed, but it seems to be a lot more welcoming and a lot more inclusive too. And I think that's something that's really great to see about kind of the scene changing over right about now. So kind of on the note of your upcoming album too, you know, you've put out a pretty sizable amount of music in a pretty short period of time. I mean, even from, you know, 2020 and onward from your EP and the last couple of singles, Snag and Overload. So you've said that you have an upcoming album coming out. Is there a release date for that we should know about?
Yes, it's called Guilty Pleasure. It's coming out on July 22nd.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Well, I'm definitely excited to hear that. Last couple of things here. You're playing Fest in Gainesville. Have you all played that festival before?
I actually played last year with my other band, Five Ever.
Nice.
It was fun. It was very fun.
Nice.
I'm really excited this year.
Yeah, what are you like looking forward to about this year's fest? And you know, I mean, what's you know, it's got to be great being surrounded by so many like other talented and, you know, like-minded artists. So I guess yeah, what are you looking forward to this year?
Just like hanging out with people, I guess. I don't know. It's cool to have that many musicians in one spot. We're gonna try to be as safe as possible because obviously, you know, it's still got a pandemic going on. But you know, as long as we maintain proper safety precautions, there's a lot of acts that I'm excited to see. A lot of acts that we've interacted with online but have never met before that I'm excited to meet. And yeah, I don't know. We've never really like played a legit festival like that before, so it's just gonna be a unique experience for us as a band. And I'm looking forward to the whole thing. Also, there's like a little part of me that kind of does like the road trip aspect of tour and just like getting to hang out with the band because we all have like full-time jobs and shit. So it's like when we do Cheem shit, that's like when we get a chance to actually hang out. So I like that too.
Agreed. And also as our first time at Fest, we're actually playing like a bigger stage. So the pressure's on. Hopefully we have a good amount of heads watching us. I think there will be. It's a really good time, and there seems to be a lot of people excited to see us down there.
Cool. All right. So the last question for you guys: what's the message that you hope that your music conveys to your fans?
I would say I hope it conveys a message of like not being ashamed to like what you like. You know what I mean? Like we want to be very inclusive and accepting. We want people to be able to like express themselves just like how we want to be comfortable expressing ourselves. And like, even though we, are putting out songs with like hyper pop and like rapping and shit like that in it, that would have been definitely very frowned upon within the DIY emo scene, like back in when we were starting out as a band. I think now that everyone's gotten a little more accepting, I want to make sure people feel that from us too. They feel like part of a community, and they feel like, when we're playing or when they're listening to us, we're having like a big ass good time together. Some, Disney Channel movie vibes, big ending. So that's what we're going for.
And also just be proud of like what you make and what you like you mentioned,
and who you are. You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, we make art that we want to hear.
Yeah.
It's being a musician is selfish to a degree, because it's you're releasing into the world music that you think is missing, and this is what we felt like was what we wanted to hear, or we felt like what was missing in rock music or punk music or anything in between. So yeah, I hope people see that and see that we really give a fuck.
If people like it, it's a bonus. But honestly, this is the first album we've ever put out where we're all like, "Yep, this is what we're supposed to sound like. This came out exactly like how we wanted it," and that's enough to satisfy us. You know what I mean?
Well, I've heard the new album, and I'm super excited for everyone else to hear it. I think it's gonna be a big hit. I think everyone's gonna love it. Do y'all have any dates or anything you specifically want to plug before you get out of here?
Yes. So as you mentioned, Guilty Pleasures is out. Oh, sorry, forgot. I said Guilty Pleasure. It's Guilty Pleasure.
There's no S.
No S is out July 22nd on Lonely Ghost Records. We're playing Coachella, which is in Bowling Green, Ohio, on July 16th, and July 17th we're playing Buffalo. July 22nd, which is the day of the album, we have a release show happening in Brooklyn at the Broadway, and then July 23rd we're playing Connecticut in this place called Red Non, Middletown, Connecticut. If you live in those areas, we would love to see you and do Fortnite dances with you.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Well, shout out to Lonely Ghost too. Great people over there. And yeah, so this has been Anthony Corbo. I've been here with Sky and Sam from Cheem. It's been great to talk to you guys and kind of get to know what's going on with the band. So for another Sad Jams interview from We're Trying Records, go follow us on Instagram at We're Trying Records. Follow us on Twitter. Go follow Sad Jams on Spotify, and check out Cheem. It's good talking to you guys.
Woo! See y'all
Thank you.
Scene Queens and Gamer Girls later.